Well, welcome everybody to Tosot time. And we have a very special guest with us today. This young man is the Business Development Manager for Innovative Technologies, or InTech, which is a division of EMCO. I think he is one of the young superstars of our industry. And I'd like everybody to say hello to Mr. Dev Mylrajan of InTech. Dev, say hello to everybody.
Hey everyone, happy Friday.
Yes, for sure. Dev, look, I kind of want to start at the start. And what I mean by that is, well, first of all, welcome to Tulsa Time. It's an absolute treat to have you as our guest. But I do want to start with a little bit about your background. Please share with our audience, if you would, what led you to your current position with Intech at EMCO?
For sure, yeah. I think it starts back in my university days. So, just to give everyone some background, I graduated from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, with the mechanical engineering degree. During my time at McMaster, and through the mechanical engineering program, I had the opportunity to explore a lot of different, routes and avenues within the field of mechanical engineering, which is pretty broad. And during that time, I actually did a co-op, and that really started me down the path of passion for energy systems and
Mm.
specifically renewable energy systems. So I did a co-op for 16 months in Thunder Bay, Ontario. If anyone's familiar with Thunder Bay, Ontario, it's quite cold. Canada's cold, but Thunder Bay is very cold. There are times that it go down to like minus 30, minus 40 easily during the winter, and it's about 4 months of summer and 8 months of winter. So
Wow.
it's an interesting experience, but it was with Hydro One remote communities, and for people in Ontario might be familiar with Hydro One, but outside of Ontario, outside of Canada, Hydro Ones are local energy utility for distribution of power,
Mm.
and remote communities actually serviced off-grid First Nations communities well north of Thunder Bay. So the main source of energy in those communities was diesel generators,
Mm.
mainly like big Cat 16 cylinder,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5 megawatt diesel gensets. But my project as a co-op student with Hydro One Remote Communities was as part of the engineering team was to actually manage the renewable energy systems that we were implementing in the communities to offset our reliance on diesel generation, which is obviously very bad for the environment. But the reason it was being used was actually because it's reliable power up north, where infrastructure is not as great. So yeah, that kind of led me down the path of renewable energy systems and just a passion for energy systems as a whole. When I went back to school in my fifth year after my co-op, I actually did a course on air conditioning and refrigeration in my final year.
Mhm.
And that really led me down the path to realize that energy systems isn't just about electricity. It's actually about, energy is a very broad area, right? So there's energy from electricity, but there's also energy in the air, and what we know is heat, and
Mhm.
now we can transfer that heat and create comfortable buildings, right? So then I realized that okay, like a lot of the concepts I learned on the power side is very relatable to energy systems for homes and buildings. And I actually found EMCO at a career fair. And it really intrigued me because in Ontario, specifically in Canada, we have this thing for engineers after graduation called an engineer in training program. It's a
Mm.
fast track route towards getting your professional engineer's license. Again, the Canadian thing here, or
Mhm.
you'll hear people say PEng.
Yeah.
And what I saw in EMCO's programs is that it was very similar to a lot of EIT programs, engineering training programs that traditional engineering companies offered, in that you learn multiple phases of the business. You do go through rotations, and you learn a lot of different facets versus just the one that you're hired for.
Sure.
And I saw something, although MCO wasn't offering an EIT program, I saw something very similar. I also saw a fast track opportunity to get into another passion of mine, which is business,
Mm.
business development, and entrepreneurship. And that's really at the core of MCO's development programs. The one that I joined is called the Management Trainee Program, which is really an accelerated route to becoming a future business leader at MCO. So that kind of got me. That's how I got in with
Yeah.
MCO, and then InTech is a whole other story that kind of started in 2017.
Before you go on to Intep, Dev, if I may, what you're calling a co-op, is that a internship?
Yes, an
Okay.
internship, a cooperative internship. Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so now that we've kind of got you up to date, tell us a little bit about Intech and MCO, if you would.
For sure, yeah. So yeah, back in 2017, when I was in the management trainee program, I started realizing, doing more research into our industry, and I started realizing that there was an inherent need to decarbonize buildings, and that was the industry direction. And it started with a lot of research at a federal level to understand what Canada was doing in all different sectors to help meet their basically our Paris climate change agreements. So there's this document, a wonderful document called the Pan-Canadian Framework, and that was written, I believe, in 2015 or 2016. And it clearly outlines in different industries, including buildings, basically ranks all the different industries and their from an emissions source base. So they say, okay, well, transportation, of course, is the number one emitter of greenhouse gases in Canada, and then second is I think industrial processes, and then third is actually buildings. So once I realized that, I was like, okay, so there's a clear path here that the federal government is going to have to push industries in, especially HVAC, being the main emitter of greenhouse gases in buildings in Canada. So there's a clear direction for us to move away from greenhouse gas fossil fuels for heating. So through that, I realized, okay, well, how do we, as a company that supplies equipment to contractors and educates contractors on the products that we support and sell for buildings, how do we reshape our business to support that mission? Because essentially that's where we're heading. So
Sure.
why not help now, right? Why not figure it out now? So
Mm.
through that, basically in 2019 and 2020, I did some regional business development where in Ontario, where I was helping contractors all over the province implement heat pump and VRF systems. And then as of 2021, I actually launched it as a business model with Intech. And then 2022, last year, was our first full year running as a business. And today we're, business, a team of 5 engineers.
Nice.
And basically the core of what we do as a division of MCO is we're MCO's in-house HVAC consulting firm or engineering firm. So our motto is design, selection, supply. We're really that one-stop shop for our contractor partners at MCO, where we start with, when we look at projects, we start with designs, then focus on the equipment and selecting the right equipment for that application. And then through our partnership with the local MCO profit centers, we actually take care of the supply and logistics as well.
Wow. Very, very cool. My observation from the outside looking in, Dev, is my perception of MCO is that for the profit center managers and people like yourself, it's as close to being a business owner without actually being a business owner, if you know what I mean. You're given a lot of freedom to make decisions, and yeah, very much like I say, a small business owner, but with the umbrella of MCO.
Absolutely, yeah, and I appreciate you you mentioning that, because yeah, at the core of all of our profit centers is autonomy. And I think, autonomy is a really powerful tool with our teammates. It's not just extended to the business leaders, the profit center managers at each individual MCO PC. It's extended through our entire team.
Yeah.
Whether you're profit center manager, inside sales, outside sales, warehouse, you have that freedom and the autonomy to impact the business. And that's really what at the heart of MCO and how we do business.
You know what I think what is brilliant about it, Dev, is that it gives you everyone some skin in the game, as they say, right? You really feel like you're an integral part of the business, and you are. Very cool.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's really important too, Jerry, because like for myself, that autonomy allowed me to lean into my passion within MCO,
Yeah.
and then create a whole new business model out of it within MCO with the support of our leadership team. I don't know many, like, I'll be the first to say that I haven't worked at many companies, so I can't explicitly say that no one
Yeah.
else offers this. But I don't know of many companies, or I haven't heard of many companies that would be so willing to support something like that.
No, I'm with you, Dev. I'm a lot older than you, my friend, and I can tell you firsthand. I have not encountered too many other companies with that type of business model. I find it fascinating, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. Hey, buddy, look, I think you, Deb, possibly more than anyone in the HVAC market in Canada, keeps a close eye on what the energy market is doing and where it's heading. So, that all said, electrification has become a new word, not only for the trades vernacular, but also in politics and for the general population as well. So, my question to you is, what are your observations regarding electrification and decarbonization?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's so many different directions that we can go with it,
Mm,
because there's lots of observations to have, especially depending on from our industry, depending on what part of the industry you're a part of, right? Whether you're a contractor, engineer, builder, building owner, or wholesaler, even.
sure.
So from my perspective, I look at it as necessity. In order to meet, it goes back to what I mentioned before, and I realized this in 2017, reading through the Pan-Canadian Framework and the government's direction. In order to meet our greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets as per our UN climate change, the Paris agreements,
Mm,
Canada, among many other nations, signed a treaty that binds them to that target. It's basically, I believe it's 30% reductions before 2050 compared to pre-industrial era. And essentially, I see it as a necessity because some really smart people across the world came together at these UN meetings in Paris and realized that we have to keep global warming below basically 1.5 degrees Celsius.
mhm.
Um, from pre-industrial era times, and basically what that means to me through reading through the Pan Canadian Framework and everything else is that essentially it's a necessity in order to meet our targets, to protect our planet. We need to do it. So that's my first observation. It is a necessity.
Mhm.
Um, the next observation is, I think, one that we can all agree on is complexity. So when we talk about actually implementing solutions for decarbonization, we need to recognize that it's very geographical. So local energy sources and infrastructures are very dominant factors, depending on your price of energy and your fuel sources for that in your local regions. Uh, that can be a very dominant factor. For example, in Ontario, natural gas for heating homes, that's inherent, that's ingrained in our energy infrastructure.
Mm,
It's historically things are changing. Cost of gas is rising due to recent issues in the world, but historically gas has always been cheaper to heat homes than electricity.
sure.
So there's very when it comes to geographies, that plays a huge part. Local energy sources and infrastructures are huge, very dominant factors. Another part of that complexity is politics, right? Politics plays
Yeah,
a huge part in all of
it
this.
does.
jobs, right? Obviously, difference in opinions in governments,
Mm,
right? Investments at a policy level, at a federal level. It plays a huge part in how we and policies in general. In terms of something recently we're seeing is how Natural Resources Canada has implemented policies. They call it amendments in products that can be shipped into Canada, and slowly they're aligning with the Department of Energy in the U.S. to make sure that products available for purchase within Canada are more efficient, right? So naturally pushing us in a direction that will get us towards decarbonization. So politics plays a huge part in that. And I think the other thing is costing. So it's complex because decarbonization, electrification at a surface level is expensive in its current state. But there are unique business models to address this. But those business models are also not well understood. Their validity has yet to be tested. It hasn't had enough time in the market for us to fully understand their long-term implications to profitability for businesses and to people, to consumers. And then finally, the complexity of this that ties us all together is essentially decarbonization, electrification. It requires mass scale coherence to implement effectively. So we need to work together. The labor force has to adapt. There's a lot of training that's required behind that. So when we talk about like a huge paradigm shift in our industry, at the end of the day, it requires coherence. It requires collaboration, and that's really the key to success. And one other thing I want to mention is like, when we talk about electrification or decarbonization, I prefer to talk about decarbonization. Electrification is I think, a means to decarbonization,
sure.
but there are other ways, to get to that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just to tie it all together, my main observation from a perspective of like how do we achieve it, it comes down to working together. Too often, as a society, we're complacent to keep going with business as usual, and just naturally humans are change adverse. But working together helps with this. And from my perspective, I'm promoting solutions, heat pumps, VRF solutions that electrify buildings, that
Sure.
decarbonize buildings. So I understand when I approach people and they tell me, well, they don't want to go in this direction because more often than not, whether it's a contractor or a building owner, they're usually being told they have to do this without a clear direction on how or why. So even just another observation is policymakers need to be able to work with all levels of industry, and often more than not at our level at industry, our level in the industry, like wholesalers and contractors. I've often seen, especially contractors, not being involved in those high level discussions on this topic, which is a problem. So at the end of the day, all this goes back to when we work with all the stakeholders together and have mass communication and coherence to work towards this common goal and remove barriers together, we can successfully decarbonize ahead of 2050 targets.
Yeah, a couple of things you've said jump out at me, Dev, and that is the political side of things, right? That's when things get a little messy, let's be honest. And whenever there's a political aspect to something, there becomes division, and that's when it becomes difficult to get everybody on the same page. And it's interesting, you mentioned global warming, and one of the influencers in our industry. Recently, I noticed on his app, he sent out just kind of a general, just threw it out there for open discussion. Um, what do you think of global warming, real or fake? I think that was actually exactly how he put it. And the last time I checked the responses, it blew me away. Majority of his followers, which are generally HVAC contractors, um, kind of felt it was fake or overblown, or just a natural cycle of the earth. And again, when we can't get everybody on the same page with something as fundamental as that, it's hard to get everybody moving in the same direction. You agree?
Completely agree. And again, it just goes back to, what I mentioned is that, you mentioned that that's a group that's a group of contractors that you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And often more than not, contractors are kind of left out of the picture when it comes to policy decisions.
Yes.
Um, and I don't necessarily mean it from a sense of like, it happens all the time. Like, I think, policymakers do try the way that they think, makes sense to engage industry, but sometimes that's not always the best way. Like, for contractors, who are busy day to day and just trying to keep, especially in today's world where they're trying to keep their head above water with, labor shortages and the skilled
Sure.
trades,
Yeah.
to ask them to come to, a conference, sometimes that just doesn't work, right? So I think figuring out how to communicate to each and tailor your communication to each part of the industry is really important on this topic.
Mm.
And again, it just goes back to, that group that you mentioned. Well, they probably haven't been engaged in these discussions at a political level or a policy
Right.
level.
Right.
And they, again, it just goes back to that they don't know the how or the why, right? So we're asking them to change, but we haven't explained to them why it's important or how to do it effectively, right?
Yeah. I think it all comes down to everybody having a seat at the table, as they say.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and one observation I'll make, I went to a meeting that you put on. It probably goes back 6 months ago already, uh, where you had a full house. And when I say full house, I mean it was triple digit attendance. So you are giving our industry, you are giving our installers an opportunity to have a seat at the table. So I commend you for that, and I'm sure that they thank you for that as well, Dev.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's and it just goes back to that's actually one of the reasons, like a core factor of like what we do at Intech. It's really like we're here to help keep our customers, mainly contractors, ahead of these changes. Right, it's really hard as a contractor to really stay ahead and understand all the changes that are happening in our industry, and it's
Sure.
happening at a rapid pace, probably unprecedented in this industry during its history, right?
No doubt.
This is unprecedented change, and when that happens, there's a lot of confusion and frustration, and that's really what we're here to do is kind of is to help kind of bridge that gap and be that source of information for our customers so that they don't have to do it alone.
Dev, that's great, and like I say, the industry appreciates you, my brother. Hey, look, Dev, some provinces have been more aggressive in their approach to electrification, decarbonization. Can you share with our audience where you see the most aggressive programs in Canada provincially?
Yeah. So outside of like there are federal programs. So the federal government will has done a great job of implementing programs that have helped us nationally across provinces and territories to help decarbonize buildings,
Mm,
specifically talking about the greener homes grant. But
sure.
outside of that greener homes grant for air source heat pumps, there are top up programs in British Columbia and Atlantic Canada and I believe Quebec. So in BC, you can get basically up to $12,000 for a new heat pump system. I believe
Wow.
it does require some fuel switching, so you have to move away from if you have a gas furnace, you've got to move away from it.
Mm,
But yeah, that significant rebates in
that's some
BC.
big bucks. Yeah.
It's huge, huge dollars on the table. And I think on top of that too, like you know, it's natural for us in our in our industry to kind of focus on the rebates that directly impact us, specifically around heating and cooling equipment.
Mm,
Um, but it's important to recognize that there are also rebates and programs in place more often than not the same programs that we're talking about now that support air source heat pumps. They also support insulation and better windows, and that's a key to decarbonization and electrification is actually reducing that building load. So
yeah.
it's kind of like The three R's are reduce, reuse, then or recycle. You go in that order in terms of sustainability. In the same way with buildings, like before you decide to put in more efficient systems, you should make your building just more efficient. It should use less, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's interesting you bring that up, Dev. My wife and I just had a Building Performance Institute certified company come in to this building where I'm speaking to you right now, the Tosot Time Studio, as well as our residential home, to give us some ideas how we can tighten things up, because both buildings are completely electric. Everything is electric. And quite frankly, electric rates have gone up significantly here. So we're trying to conserve and tighten up everywhere we can. And they gave us some great suggestions. So yeah, it's something that everybody has to take a closer look at for sure.
Nice.
Yeah. So Dev, beyond electrification, where do you see the greatest potential for alternatives to fossil fuel?
Yeah, it's another great question. Yeah, I guess alternatives to where I see the greatest potential for other like alternatives to fossil fuel.
Mm,
One that I'm really interested in on, and I'm trying to learn a little bit better. I don't know any specific technologies behind it, but it's basically carbon capture. So uh, in a nutshell, I mean, like it's not quite an alternative to fossil fuel. I just beyond electrification itself, I see that another means to decarbonization is actually just continuing to have technologies that better sequester carbon out of the air
yeah.
and then use that for other means or processes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're seeing CO2 refrigeration systems, which are pretty interesting. But yeah, in general, the premise of carbon capture technology is basically what trees do, right?
Right.
They pull carbon out of the air, and then they reuse them in another fashion or for another process. So yeah, that's one that I'm really excited about. In the transportation industry, hydrogen fuel cells is creating
Mm,
a lot of buzz. I think that's a good one to consider um, because obviously electrification will put a lot of stress on our existing infrastructure, on our existing grid. So it's always good to look at other fuel options and other alternatives to fossil fuels that's not electrification, and hydrogen fuel cells is one of them. Um, I think with cars too, when we electrify the transportation industry,
mm,
that's going to put a huge strain on our grid. And if we were to do it today, like I think it's possible for sure. I just don't think our grid is quite ready for that quite yet.
yeah.
But there's things that are that play into to combat that. For example, just because you're electrifying, homes and your cars, like your transportation, it doesn't necessarily mean that has to all go on the grid. Like it doesn't have to be a full strain on the grid.
Right.
Part of our transition to net zero homes and buildings, for example, by 2032 is making sure that there's solar panels and renewable technologies to house for each building. So part of reducing the strain on the grid is also just having renewable energy systems for buildings and battery storage systems that they can draw from, car systems can draw from, heat pumps can draw from, so that it's not an additional strain on the grid. But yeah, sorry, just going back to the question. Um, another one that's interesting for northern communities, and I saw this actually at Hydro One, is biomass. So just like using district heating systems, where you heat up water, or like some sort of water glycol solution, and you heat homes districtly through that. But the fuel source isn't gas; it's not electricity. Well, a little bit of electricity, but it's not a heat pump necessarily.
Right.
It's burning like wood pellets.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. There's a lot of alternatives out there. Getting back to the political side of it just for a moment, Dev, you know, my feeling about electrification from a political point of view is so many of the politicians would like electrification to have happened yesterday, right? Every car being electric, every home being heat pump. And as you mentioned, the grid just simply isn't ready for that yet. I say it kind of brings back the old adage, you have to be careful what you wish for. This has to move up. The technology, the grid itself kind of has to move up with electrification, right? We have to be able to supply the demand as the demand goes up. And right now, I'm not quite so sure the grid is moving as quickly as the movement toward electrification is happening. But
Yeah.
again, it's definitely the right direction, but we just have to keep pace, I guess is what I'm saying. The grid has to keep pace.
For sure, yeah, and I'm not so sure that if we were to change today, that we would be able to support it. But I mean, in all fairness, I actually like I think there's a lot of really talented, incredible people at at Enercan and at the federal level, as well as working with the utility providers that are trying to figure it out
Sure.
essentially. And I'm
No
sure
question.
it's definitely possible, right? So it's not unrealistic to think that we can do it eventually, but I'm not convinced. I haven't seen the data to support that we could do it right now.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely.
that's pretty much the consistent message I've been hearing around that. So yeah,
You also mentioned solar. And again, because of the electrical rates here where we are rising significantly, um, my wife and I are considering solar, and I never thought I would consider photovoltaic solar. We had thermal solar when we were in New York, did 100% of our domestic hot water requirements. But I really never saw the economics being where it needed to be with photovoltaic. But you know what? It's gotten a heck of a lot better, and we're going to research it. We'll see what happens, but yeah, we're actually going to take a close look at it and talk to a few local companies about it here.
yeah, the business case for solar, I think from a payback standpoint is pretty strong, especially as to see where solar has come, from its infancy stages to where it is now. It's the technology just keeps improving and improving. So
And
yeah,
it's
no, it's
interesting.
great to hear. Yeah.
Something very topical. Just last night, my wife and I met with our tax accountant, and we mentioned this to him. And he said, "Well, look, Jerry and Patricia, if you're going to do it before you retire, because you'll get a 30% tax credit. 30% tax credit.
Wow.
But you have to be. It's a tax credit against your income, and obviously, our income now is greater than it will be when we retire.
Yeah.
And let me go on the record. We're not ready to retire. I'm a good 7 years away. But I thought it was interesting that he brought that up. So yeah, again, a nice tax break with the solar. Look, Dev, I'm curious about your answer to this. Is it realistic to think fossil fuels will someday be in the history books? What do you think?
That's an interesting question. I guess like it is realistic. It's realistic in that it's not impossible.
Right.
We can do it and we have the technology to even do it now, but it does require mass scale cooperation between governments, industry, society as a whole. It's a huge paradigm shift, right?
Mm,
So again, it just goes back to cooperation. Um, but so it is realistic in that we can physically do it. It's not impossible. I think it's unrealistic in that it may not be required in its entirety, at least.
right.
So when we think about decarbonization, um, decarbonization is about bringing things back to a balance. It's simply put, it's accounting. We can use fossil fuels, just not at the rate that we currently are. And there's a reason that governments like implement cap and trade programs, for example, and why there are worldwide carbon credit markets, basically for people, emitters to buy, um, to buy credits, and then people who are implementing carbon capture technologies or sequestration technologies to sell those credits or reducing their usage.
Right.
Essentially, it's financial instruments used to incentivize those who use less and penalize those who use more, while keeping things at a balance or capping the amount of greenhouse gases produced, right? So at the end of the day, there are a ton of natural processes that actually emit carbon back into the atmosphere too, and natural processes to sequester that carbon, like trees and basically foliage, right? Like trees
Yeah.
will sequester carbon back from the atmosphere. So, but the rate that we're going at is way past what the planet can naturally sequester.
Mm.
Um, so essentially, it just comes back to balancing the books, right? Once we balance the books, the planet will respond as it was intended to. Um, Very much like, just like a business, right? Like if your books aren't balanced, you're probably, heading towards the wrong path, right? So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
you should balance the books, and then things will settle, and you'll see the success after that. But yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'll admit, like I'm not. This, that's not one of my specialties. Like I don't do greenhouse gas accounting, but there are plenty of people who have certifications to do greenhouse gas accounting, and that's something that's becoming more popular in industry as a whole when we talk about decarbonization. So yeah, it does that is a real term, greenhouse gas accounting, and there are professionals that do that. And yeah,
Amazing.
it goes back to balancing the books.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. Dev, help me here because I'm sure I'm having the same question in my mind that a lot of our listeners and will be having as they watch this. Carbon capture. Can you kind of define that for the general public, so to speak? What do you mean by carbon capture?
Yeah, so it really just means that you're pulling carbon dioxide out of the air, just like trees naturally do. They sequester carbon out of the air. So carbon capture technologies will pull carbon out of the air and then look to like reuse it in some other process. And I will admit that the technology itself is pretty complex, and I haven't done enough
Well,
research on it.
I can imagine.
But I've heard a lot of like podcasts talking about it, and just heard a lot of different just sources talk about carbon
Yeah.
capture technology. But the general gist of it is that you're removing carbon from the air and using it in another process.
It's fascinating, isn't it, Dev? I mean, this whole decarbonization really is creating new jobs, new technologies, new industries, possibly when you think about it. Pretty interesting.
For sure, yeah, it's fascinating, and definitely, yeah. When you talk about jobs, like there's, I think it's an exciting time for people to consider going to the trades. Right? There's
Yes.
even in the from a trades perspective, it's going to require a huge, shift in mindset change, and also just a bunch of training and improvement of knowledge of new systems. So it's an exciting time to be in trades. Like when we compare heat pump technology to traditional forced air systems, furnaces and central air systems, like they they're not as tech heavy. I mean, Jerry, better than anyone the tech behind a mini split and what that all entails and the amount of sensors there are in it, electronic
Yeah.
expansion valves. Right, we're dealing with mini computers at this point, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you have to really understand electronics. And you have to understand refrigeration systems. There's a lot of science and mathematics that go behind these systems. So when as new people coming into the industry or considering our industry, trades is a great route to get into, because of all the changes. And what those changes mean to new people coming into the industry is that it's not going to be viewed as the same way as trades were viewed before, right? So that change in mindset around how trades does work, like that will help also attract more people into the industry if they recognize that, hey, that there's exciting technology that needs to be implemented, and I can be a part of that change, right?
No question. Music to my ears, Dev. Much of what you said there about training, right? Uh, because that's my deal. But yeah, I think to some degree the trades we were our own worst enemy for a time there because we used to say, hey, come into the trade. You're going to make a lot of money, opportunities to have your own business. We know it ain't sexy. Well, you know what? Now it's sexy, babe. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they
Now
brought the
it's
sexy
sexy.
back. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of cool stuff going on. Um, hey, look, Dev, let's talk about how the HVAC market is responding to these new energy initiatives within Canada. What equipment or technology excites you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a natural one, because this is about 80% of the work that we do at Intech, is VRF, variable refrigerant flow systems. So
Yeah,
when we talk about heat pumps, I think there's a ton of different heat pump systems on the market. Heat pumps don't stop at air source. Mini splits like the ones that Tosot manufactures.
hmm,
But there's air to water heat pumps. There's
sure is.
obviously the ones that we're talking about now, the air source heat pumps, geothermal heat pumps, right? Water to water source heat pumps. But VRF is an extension of air source heat pumps, and just basically a larger commercial version of air source heat pumps, where instead of having one outdoor unit and one indoor unit, or one outdoor unit, like a multi-zone outdoor unit, and three separate or four separate, five separate line sets going to five multiple indoor units.
Yeah,
You have one outdoor unit, one basically condensing unit that can takes basically refrigerant through one line set, and branches off to up to 60 indoor units,
yeah,
60 plus indoor units, right? Depending on obviously the size of the condenser and the orientation. You can supply multitude of zones with just one system.
sure.
So yeah, VRF is an amazing technology, constantly adapting to. There's heat pump, and then there's heat recovery systems too, where you can actually have heating and cooling in the same building simultaneously, right?
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Other than that, probably, I mentioned air to water heat pumps. That's a really cool technology that's taking off now. And I should mention that these aren't necessarily new technologies; they've been
No,
available for a long time, but they're taking off more and gaining recognition in our market, due to decarbonization. But in other parts of the planet, these are very common systems. But yeah, air to water is another great one. When we talk about space heating, gas being a huge consumer for space heating in Canada. Well, what about water heating? Water heating is a huge intensive energy load. Especially with the direction of homes, the way that they're becoming so efficient now with our path towards net zero homes. The biggest energy load in net zero homes isn't space heating. It's not space cooling. It's actually water heating.
yeah,
So air to water systems kind of solve all three, in that they can do cooling, they can do heating for space air conditioning.
sure.
They can also do water heating at the same time. And then the last technology that I'm really interested in, more on the control side, are smart fuel switching controllers. So there's some products out on the market right now where basically they'll switch over from heat pump to gas, or heat pump to electricity.
Sure.
Heat pump to gas,
Hmm.
um, based on the live utility rate,
Yeah,
and the performance of the system at the outdoor temperature. So we know that heat pumps reduce capacity and reduce efficiency, specifically air source heat pumps, when they're exposed to colder climates. So one common challenge that contractors, trades, just engineers, designers will have is figuring out at what point do you cut over to gas if that's your backup. So there's lots of different methods that people use. One method is thermal balance point, which essentially is okay. Well, when does your heat pump not keep up with the demands of your building? At that point, switch over. But then it's also important to recognize that maybe that's not the best point to switch over to gas from an economic standpoint, from your utility bills.
Right.
So to optimize your utility bills, they've created some smart fuel switching controllers, which will actually switch between gas and electricity based on live utility rates and the performance of the equipment.
Very cool. Dev, I just came back from the AHR Expo in Atlanta, and you were mentioning air to water, and boy, that does seem to be the next big thing. Everybody, all the big players, Toso included, are jumping into that air to water market for sure. Another thing you mentioned with, you know, since I've been working so much in Canada the last year or two, you guys have turned me on to dual fuel systems. You guys are so into dual fuel systems. What you were just explaining, where you will utilize the fuel source that is most efficient to burn at that point, whether it be gas, whether it be electricity. And I saw a Canadian company, Ecobee, which I've been exposed to a number of times now with my jobs up in Canada, and they're a Canadian company, which is cool. They were at the show as well. So yeah, that control technology again, new avenues, new industries, new products being required for all these new technologies, and it's really really cool that these companies are stepping up and providing those products.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's I wasn't at the show, but I appreciate you sharing that. That's
Yeah.
really cool to see there was more air to water heat pumps. When we were at CMPX, I think it was in a couple of years ago, 2021, 2022.
Mm.
But it really, I mean, it really brightened my day to see how many air source heat pump manufacturers there were. So naturally, I think we're gonna see, obviously, air source heat pumps, very established technology, I would say, now in Canada, with so many different offerings, different manufacturers, different suppliers, contractors that are comfortable with it.
Sure.
We're going to see that with air to water, and it's cool to see that you saw that at AHR. And I guess that part of that too is air to water systems are probably pretty popular down in the States, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and gaining in popularity for sure. Yeah, I like I say, I was really blown away. Every year when I go to AHR, there always seems to be a half a dozen more heat pump manufacturers. Uh, but yeah, really surprised how many air to water new products were coming onto the market, and definitely on display there last week in Atlanta. Hey, Dev, you and Evan Jen, who's also from Intech, will often speak at my TOSO training events about the Canada Greener Homes program. Can you share with our audience the basics of the program, and what does the installer need to do? What does the homeowner need to do to apply for those very, very significant grants up in Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give the listeners just some background about the program. So, the Canada Greener Homes Grant Program. It's basically, I think it's a multi-billion-dollar fund nationally, and it's in basically no, I wouldn't say it's infancy stages, but still in its early stages. It's a approved program up until 2027. Granted that new governments don't come in and squash it. But again, politics, right? Right, Jerry?
Again, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. So the essentially the purpose of the program is to help Canadian homeowners across Canada, Canadian homeowners help decarbonize their homes. So that happens in the form of reducing their energy requirements through improvements in insulation, envelope improvements with doors, windows, air sealing, things like that. But also, big part of it is air source heat pumps. So right now, the way that it works is that it applies for people, like basically homeowners, where they occupy the home. So rental properties don't apply. So it's mainly
Okay.
like single family dwellings, where the homeowner actually is living in that house. And you can get up to $5,000 for a new air source heat pump system. Granted that you don't already have that system in place in the home. So basically, they're incentivizing homeowners to decarbonize buildings through insulation and envelope upgrades, as well as upgrades to space heating systems, and as well for water heating. There's actually an incentive in place for water heating as well. So there's heat pump water heaters on the market now.
Oh, yeah.
And there's about, I believe it's $1,000 that they'll pay to the homeowner to receive that. In order to qualify for the rebate, though, you do need to go through an energy audit, similar to the one that Jerry mentioned earlier that him and Patricia did for their own home.
Right.
And basically the auditor will come through, do a blower door test to understand how tight your building envelope is, and pressurize the home to see what the air leakage is. From that, they get some as well as some other assessments. They get an idea of like the energy rating of your home on a 0 to 100 scale, and they basically suggest some changes. So they say, well, here's where your house is sucking energy, and here's where obviously this is in order of priority where you can have the most impact. So oftentimes it's actually insulation, unless your house is already well insulated. But most homes are, I would say, across the country aren't as well insulated as compared to current building code practices.
Right.
So there's actually significant benefits to improving envelopes. But they also talk about air source heat pumps and the significant benefits there too, especially if you're using gas to heat your home. They definitely recognize that offsetting that gas with an air source heat pump that's more efficient will definitely save on the total energy requirement on the home. So there's significant rebates for that.
Let me ask you, Dev. You mentioned the home energy audit, if you will. Is that at the cost of the homeowner? Who pays for that?
Yeah, so the homeowner will pay for it up front, and there's a pre-audit. So you get the pre-audit done before you install any equipment, and then after the pre-audit's done, the installer comes back. They install the approved eligible equipment. So that's another part of their program, is that they have a list of equipment that actually qualifies. So many manufacturers, including Tosot, especially Tosot, have a pretty wide range of products that qualify for the program. So the installer, and after the pre-audit is done, it's determined that an air source heat pump would be of benefit by the auditor. The installer comes in, installs an approved eligible system on the list, and then a post audit is done. So going back to your question, the homeowner does pay out of pocket for the pre-audit and post audit, but the government does, on top of, separate from the up to $5,000 that's available, they also provide an extra $500 just to cover the cost of the audit.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I know I don't know if it's Intech or MCO or both possibly. I know you guys have a link. You have a site where you can actually check MCO's inventory of products that qualify for the program. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's on the Intech website. So if you go on our website and go under rebates, you'll see a tab for Greener Homes Grant, and you scroll down on that web page that opens up, and there's a embedded Excel spreadsheet. It's basically just a database on our website now that's searchable. So you can search by brand, you can search by model number. You can filter based on rebate amounts. You can download, the Excel sheet and do custom searches as well. But essentially, it's just an easy way for our customers to understand, hey, I'm shopping at MCO. So what qualifies? What do they have that qualifies under?
No, that's a great feature that you provide. Yeah, that really works. So we're talking Intech, Dev, and that is a division of MCO. Please share with our audience, tell us about MCO, and there are many divisions and subsidiaries within Canada. Some people know the MCO name, but there's other names that encompass the MCO family, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. As a division of MCO, at the end of the day, like all of our divisions, including Intech, we are, at the end of the day, we are MCO, and we're kind of synonymous with, the culture and the business practices that we've learned through MCO. But MCO, just to tell the audience about MCO, we're a wholesale distributor of mechanical products. Basically, if it touches air, gas, or water, we usually have a solution for it.
Yeah.
MCO's mainly familiar, like more familiar to consumers as a plumbing brand, um, and yeah, we've like basically MCO locations across Canada. A lot of them are plumbing locations where they actually have a showroom and a retail aspect to it as well. But we also have other divisions within MCO. So we've got a waterworks division that does municipal piping for underground piping for municipalities for big water systems. HDP utility piping, often that uh, under the division Sandale, often those that piping, the HDP, high density polyurethane, that piping is often used for geothermal applications
Sure.
or industrial applications in oil and gas. And then we have obviously our HVAC division. We have fire protection, like sprinkler system.
Yeah.
So we've got that. So a multitude of divisions for sure. But MCO as a company, just to give a brief breakdown, we are over 115 years old. We have over 300 locations across Canada in multiple divisions, as we mentioned. And at the core of what we do is our culture. So you heard it here before, just about our culture of entrepreneurship and autonomy to our people. A
Yeah.
big part of that autonomy is actually just how our business works. We are a decentralized business. So what that means is that each individual MCO profit center is run by a team that basically responds to the local market. So we don't have our national support center in London, for example, which would be our head office. Um, they don't tell us what to stock, and they don't
Okay.
say you have to have a minimum stock level of this. They don't tell us how to price. Um, you know, we are given the freedom to figure out how to hire people and at what rates that we hire them. Essentially, every individual MCO business is its own little business within its local market, and the
Yeah.
reason that that's so powerful is because now we have local decision making. We can make pricing decisions on the fly. We can respond to what the local market needs. So very like it's interesting because I actually when I was growing up, my first job I used to work at Denny's, and I loved working in the restaurant business. My dad comes from the restaurant business,
Ah.
and uh, through that I actually learned a lot about how franchises work. And one of the things that really irked me about Denny's was that they forced us to stock grits, and and grits. I mean, you're familiar with grits, but I don't think many
Yes.
Canadians are familiar with grits. But
No.
I think Jerry, you'd probably be able to describe it better than I can. But I think it's like a cream of wheat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good description. Yeah.
So, anyways, the long and short of it is that no one really knew what grits were in Canada. So when I was working at a Canadian Denny's location, they'd be like, hey, do you want okay, you want the Grand Slam? Do you want grits with that? And I'm like, what are grits? And it's like, and we were, prompted to promote it because we would never sell the damn thing. So,
Right.
but we had to have stock of it, and then it would
Right.
just go bad, and then we'd have to buy more because we had to have a
Right.
minimum stock of it. So that just shows kind of the juxtaposition between a franchise business like
Yeah.
that, and we see some similar businesses, business mentalities in our industry at the wholesale level that operate like that,
Yeah.
versus a decentralized business where you can make the decisions that make sense for your local market. So yeah, that's it. I really appreciate that about MCO because that decentralized business manner also helps us as teammates working within the local profit centers. it helps give us that autonomy that we talked about, that really helps us lead out new ideas and new thoughts, and really feel purpose at working for MCO.
Yeah. I love the grit story.
It
Yeah.
got. I was a I worked pretty much every job possible at Denny's. Yeah, and serving was definitely one of my favorites. And the grits got me every time. Yeah, I
That's
just
great.
couldn't. I tried it. I couldn't get behind it. Like I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't.
No,
Grits with a
I've
dollop.
never been a fan myself.
Yeah, it was grits with a dollop of butter right on top. I was like, okay, it's not oatmeal.
We're probably going to get an onslaught of grit lovers
Yeah.
who are going to be very upset with us.
Hey, hey, power to the grit lovers, but
Power
it's,
to
it's
the
not
grit.
for me. Okay, I'm not gritty enough. I guess don't have enough grit.
Hey, Dev, I mentioned the young man, Evan Jin, who works with you at Intech earlier. And, you and Evan are young, bright, highly motivated. And what about the HVAC trade and the industry attracted you to it? And what keeps you guys engaged in it? What is unique about our beautiful industry that attracted young, bright people like yourself and Evan?
Yeah, it's great question. I think for me, it was just going back to my experience working at Hydro One, just a passion for energy systems, and realizing that buildings are a very complex energy box when you look at it, right? So from an engineering perspective, HVAC is fascinating. To the number of ways that you can deliver a kilowatt or BTU of heat is just fascinating. So thermodynamics and heat transfer has always been fascinating to me.
Sure.
So naturally, that has always attracted. That has always been very attractive to me. And I know, I refer to myself as a nerd because I truly am just an absolute nerd. And I know Evan's, also an engineer as well. He's a co-op student right now at Carleton University. He's really, really bright, and definitely smarter than me. I'll definitely admit that. And he has that same kind of passion. I think simply put, we're just two nerds that love learning about energy systems, and had the fortunate opportunity to learn that through our degrees, and create a passion for it. But outside of like just the technical side of it, I think it all comes down to people. So I think it's just the thing I love about the work and the industry and the job in general is that there's so many opportunities to engage with so many people outside of just our immediate channel with
Sure.
wholesale and contractors and vendors. There's builders involved, there's engineers, there's designers, building owners and business owners as well, homeowners, right? Everyone needs heating and cooling across the planet. So it's something that it's not going to go away. And it's also very interesting just in the topic of climate change, how much of an impact decarbonizing buildings can make on our climate change efforts to help make the planet a better place. So I think aside from obviously being technically in love with the technical side of it, and then obviously very passionate about all the different people that you meet, it also feels really good to be a part of something that creates meaningful change.
Well, I tell you, Dev, again, music to my ears. I'm quite a bit older than you. I've been at this game a long time, and it warms my heart to know that people of your caliber and Evan's caliber are interested and want to make a career in this beautiful industry of ours. So I am so pleased and so proud that people again of your caliber are interested, and I hope more. We need more of you, right? we need
Of course,
we,
yeah.
we need more people coming into the trades and the many levels of trade, whether it be actual installation techs or on the sales side of things. There's so many opportunities in this industry. So again, I'm grateful that people like you and Evan find it so interesting,
Sure.
and I hope you continue for the rest of your
Yeah.
career.
Thank you so much, Jerry. That's really, really kind, and I really appreciate that. And likewise, what I would say is that we need more people like you, honestly. And there are a lot of people like you because, um, I learned in this industry. Like I came in, like yes, I learned stuff at school, but that didn't mean nearly as much as what I've learned through my career at MCO and all
Mm.
the amazing people that came, before me that have so much knowledge and experience. That's how I learned what I know today, right? So when we have people like you who are so willing to teach, it makes it that much more easier to get into an industry like this and stay in it and be passionate about it, right? So as much as we need new people coming in the industry for sure, and passionate people, but a part of keeping them in the industry and keeping them passionate to stay is people like you, honestly. So I tip my hat to you, Jerry. It means a lot. I've learned a lot from you, and I appreciate your support.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much, Dev. Hey, look, I'm going to give you a chance here to give a shout out to anyone at MCO who you feel deserves some special attention. So here's your opportunity. Go, Dev. Who deserves a shout out?
That's a hard one. A lot of people deserve special attention, but I'm gonna give a shout out to the first name that typically comes to my mind is Joanna Wu.
Yes.
You know Joanna very well,
Yes.
and just for everyone listening in, Joanna is an absolute rock star. She's been my mentor since day one. She was actually a huge reason why I even got into Temco. She's an engineer as well, and she really helped me reassure, like, just understand that this is, even though you're going through wholesale, this is a very there's lots of opportunity to utilize your engineering skill set. You just have to go out there and drive it. And she's been a mentor and supporter of Intech and supporter of me since day one. And I seriously just wouldn't be here where I am without her support. Joanna is doing some incredible things. She operates similar to how I operate a division within MCO that provides services through local profit centers. She also does the same thing with Comfort Owl, which is our in-house leasing and financing program.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's on to some really, really exciting things. And yeah, definitely a name that everyone should know, because she does some amazing things for our industry too.
Yeah. And Joanna was at the AHR Expo, and we caught up with Joanna, which was great. And she mentioned, I won't say too much about it because I don't know how public it is just yet, but as you mentioned, some exciting things coming on the financing side with Joanna's side of the business. So yeah, that's really exciting stuff for sure. Well, my friend Dev, we're down to the last question, buddy. And it is, where do you see the greatest need right now in our industry? Is it labor? Is it inventory? Is it even greater incentives for alternative energies, or is it something else?
Yeah, I'm going to stay consistent with the messaging here because I've said it time
Yeah,
and time again through this interview, and I truly believe it. I know you do too. It's skilled trades. Um,
yeah,
we need more respect for them as an industry, I think, and more incentives, awareness to the younger population to get into skilled trades. It's an exciting time to become a tradesperson or to be
oh,
involved in the trades at some
absolutely.
capacity. So I would 100% to say it's skilled trades from a perspective of adapting, the current, tradespeople, help supporting and helping them become better at what they do, especially with adapting technology, um, and also, attracting new talent. So that's one area, and then the other area I would say that's really, really important and on my mind constantly is communication and process. So I see our industry as ripe for disruption when it comes to technology. And I'm not talking about, like, physical pieces of technologies that deliver, comfort.
Mm,
I'm talking about technology that provide better services. So I think so. Software as a service, for example, software as a service companies historically have disrupted other industries. Uber for taxi, Amazon for distribution, Airbnb for hotels. These companies, what they do is they enhance the user experience and make it so convenient for the customers in their industry, and just adapt that, just completely change that industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm sure our industry is next. We're getting a lot of attention in the media. I'm sure there's some. Honestly, there's probably already companies working on it now. So, but keep an eye out for the next Uber, Amazon, Airbnb, whatever of HVAC.
So disruption in a good way, though, right?
In a great way, yeah, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Dev, my friend, we've been talking for an hour. Isn't that amazing? It goes so quick. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having a interesting conversation with two great people.
Absolutely. And Dev, I can't thank you enough for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and most importantly today, your time with us and our audience. And I thank you, my friend. I love you, and thank you so much for being a guest on Tosot Time.
Thanks, Jerry. I really appreciate it, and yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, buddy. Well, for those of us who are a little older in this wonderful industry of ours, doesn't that conversation with Dev just make you feel good? Doesn't it feel like this wonderful industry is in the hands of bright, smart, energetic people? Because it is. Dev is representative of the new generation, and I could not be more thankful for them and more in awe of them, quite frankly. So, Dev, thank you again, my friend. Hey, it's time for Jerry's pick of the month. And my pick of the month is going to be a Navac tool product, and it is their NEV K3 Rapid Evacuation Kit. My friends, I have found the manufacturer, I have found the product that is the perfect evacuation kit for the Tosot Apex system. I'm sure Navac didn't know this going in. It's just sheer coincidence, I'm sure. But it was as if this product was designed for the Tosot Apex system. So those of you who have been coming to my training events probably for the last year, or maybe even two at this point, know that this has become a pet project of mine. I rant about it, literally rant about it in my trainings about proper evacuation. And proper evacuation starts with the proper tools. And here is an example where a company, specifically Navac Tools, has come out with an incredible product that, whether they knew it or not, is perfect for the Apex system. Let me tell you quickly what the kit consists of. It consists of one Navac NHB1, that's a 1/2 inch diameter hose by 3/8 to 1/4 inch fitting, one of those. The NHB2 Navac hose, again 1/2 inch diameter, but this time 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch fitting. It comes with two Navac NVR1 valve core removal tools. This is important, guys, because that tool is 5/16 by 1/4 by 1/4. And the valves, the service valves on the indoor and outdoor Apex unit are 5/16. So having two of them is critical as well, because remember, with the Tosot Apex, your outdoor coil and your indoor coil both come factory charged with R410. So think about that. You are just evacuating the line set, right? And to do it simultaneously, you're going to need two of those core removal tools. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. And then lastly, the last component of the kit is the NMV1 micron gauge. So with all those components, again, all found within that singular kit, you don't have to add anything to it. You don't have to go to another manufacturer for another component. Everything in that singular kit, you can do this. You can hook up both of those hoses to your multi-fitting outlet on your vacuum gauge and now simultaneously evacuate your liquid and gas line. Come on. That's pretty cool.